Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Dina Stroish connects rural routes for you. From the Farm Bill to crop insurance to GMO labeling, her expertise is apparent in the stories she reports. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I get to meet interesting people and share their stories, and I get paid to do it. I cover ag policy and really enjoy keeping the farming community updated on these important issues.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Attention, Illinois farmers. You won't want to miss this field day at SIU Carbondale University Farms. It's your chance to hear from industry experts about ongoing research and how it will benefit your farm. Join us on June 26 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. with free lunch included. This is a joint effort of the SIU College of Agricultural Sciences, Illinois Nutrient Research and Education Council, and Illinois Farm Bureau. You must pre-register at IllinoisNREC.org and click on upcoming events.
You're listening to RFD Town & Country Partners, connecting you with the food you eat, the Illinois farmers who grow it, and the food-related events, destinations, and lifestyles that make our state great.
Welcome to RFD Town & Country Partners. On a Monday, I'm DeLoss Yonke. We'll go down to Jacksonville now, and Extension Educator, Environmental Stewardship, and Energy, Dwayne Friend, is on the program. Friend of the show and hopefully yours. Dwayne, how are you today?
I'm living the dream today.
Well, that sounds pretty good. Now, well, I tell you, just the difference in your 5 counties, is that right?
Yes, 5 counties, goes from Cass down through to Calhoun.
So the situations are, just depending on where you are, but in some place downright dire, I assume.
We have a lot of very anxious people along the river right now. We've got several levees that are just, they're working around the clock to try to get those shored up, and hopefully they'll hold. As far as I know at this point, they are holding, but it's going to be really close for the next several days, and then, of course, how long it takes for things to go back down. And as you've been talking about all day, the weather, the rainfall amounts don't sound too conducive to having it drop very quickly, and we certainly don't need it to go up any higher, but I think that high water is going to be around for some time.
Right. Dwayne is in Calhoun, Cass, Greene, Morgan, and Scott County in the U of I Extension Unit. So one of the things I think about, just depending on how much is sitting around, or just even, I still remember when we got mold in our place, we had a 7-inch rain on Labor Day, 2002, if I remember right. And a couple of days later, the heat came on and the mold came out.
It doesn't take very long under those conditions, and you're absolutely right. Whether you've got a crawl space, whether you've got a basement this time of year, and really not just because this year is extremely wet, really any time when you have those, even just regular rainfall events, sometimes you can get that soil moisture if it's a crawl space, or if you do have heavy rains, maybe it's not been excessively wet, but then you get that one heavy rainfall and you get some water in the basement. And like you say, if you don't get things dried out within about 24 to 48 hours, that mold can start. And that's really kind of the time frame you need to look at. If you do have, say, water that comes into a basement, if you can get it out fairly quickly, get the water cleaned out, get the dehumidifiers on, get things dried out relatively quickly, you really shouldn't have a problem. But in a lot of cases, it's very hard to do that. So then you're looking at some type of remediation, whether you have, hopefully a lot of times you don't have drywall in there, but, drywall, those kind of things, once they get mold, there's really nothing that you can do to get that mold off. That's something that you're probably going to have to replace. Same way with carpet padding. If you have like the indoor-outdoor carpet in a basement, you might be able to get that dried out fairly quickly. But if it's got a pad underneath it, that moisture is going to stay in there, that mold's going to be there, and then you're just going to be, if nothing else, you're going to just have that musty smell throughout there. So there are some things that you just don't have a choice, you're going to replace. But another thing, especially hard surfaces, and if you do start seeing mold, there are some things that you can do with those. Sometimes you can just clean them off with a a bleach water solution, those types of things. But the big thing to remember, too, with mold is, the spores on those things are really small, and on smaller jobs, you might be able to do it yourself, but for large jobs, it might be better, even though it may cost some money, it may be better health-wise to have a professional service come in and take care of those kind of things, because they know how to control where those spores may go in terms of once you start trying to clean them, wipe them off, those kind of things. And for large areas, you really need those kind of things, because otherwise those spores will just go everywhere.
So here's a question I have about that, and so this is taking Paul Stoddard's knowledge. So Paul Stoddard's a senior lecturer at U of I in the College of Aces, and talks about the importance of trained professionals, but also the warning of don't ask the barber if you need a haircut. So surely these guys, you ask somebody to come in, they're going to find something to do, but at the same time, in the conditions that we have, an ounce of prevention sort of thing as well.
Well, part of it gets into, too, how comfortable you feel on doing some of those things. If you haven't been involved with any of that, now there are some resources out there that kind of will also give you some guidelines. If you go to the US EPA website, they have pretty extensive resources on mold and mold remediation. So if you are thinking about doing something like that on your own, it will go through and give you some checklists, some things to think about, and some ideas on how to take care of some of those things. So, once you look through that type of website, then you can kind of make a better, more informed decision on whether you think you can tackle it yourself or whether you need a professional service. And again, one of the big things, too, is it may be something that you think, I can do this myself, but you got that time frame to think about, too. If it's something that really needs to be taken care of quickly to keep the situation from being worse, it's another reason that you may want to consider some type of professional service to get it done quickly.
Sure. What about for selling timber then? What effects or what are things that we should be looking for or be warned against?
Well, for selling timber, we've had a lot of people come into the office here in the last 6 months to a year or so because timber prices have been pretty high. And we actually have done some timber workshops. We typically do those in February of each year in different parts of our unit. But, this time of year you may get some people, obviously not in flooded areas, but other areas where you get someone knocking on the door and say, hey, I know you got some timber out there. Could I interest you in selling some of that timber? So just wanted to mention a few quick things. If you are considering selling timber, some things to be thinking about. And one of the first things, and it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, and it may sound like it may cost some money, but it actually will give the landowner probably hundreds, if not thousands, of extra dollars when the deal is done. But that's looking at hiring a professional forester to represent the landowner and to mark the timber and to help with that timber sale process. That forester will go out and mark the trees that are good marketable trees, will help set up a timber contract, will help an individual with the bidding process, and that's another thing that landowners should do. Instead of just going with the first person that comes along, do a bid process where people, multiple loggers will come in and actually put in a bid on whatever that marketable timber was that the professional forester has set up. And that's one thing that'll help the landowner, too. If they know ahead of time how much marketable timber they have, they're going to have a pretty good idea of what they should get for that, so they're going to have that background knowledge. Just a few other things with this real quick. With anything, and this is no exception, landowners should ask questions, get references from the timber buyers. Again, have that professional forester mark trees, and they need to mark the trees down at the bottom because that way you can go back and you can reference to make sure that the correct trees were cut and that no trees that weren't on that list, weren't marketable trees or weren't marked by the forester, were cut inadvertently or on purpose. With that contract, People need to understand and know what the details of that contract, what's going on with that. Never agree to just an oral agreement. Know how much you're going to be paid. Know when that timing of that payment is going to be made. And then one of the other big things, just being a good neighbor, making sure that not only you, but the forester, or the logger and the forester, know exactly where the property lines are, because if you end up cutting some trees on the neighbor's property, that's not going to be a good thing for either person. So, those are just some things to keep in mind when selling timber.
Gotcha. Just by the way, have you ventured recently to the west? I'm thinking about the valley just east of the Illinois River. Have you seen that lately? Is it all water? Is it mostly water? Just what does it look like?
Well, I was just down. I had to go down to Calhoun County, I guess a week ago tomorrow, and even at that point, the levees right there at Campsville were very high. The ferry, at least at that point, was still running. I guess it's closed now. But actually, the bottoms, there were some steep spots, and there were some areas that were underwater. But for the most part, they were still, at least they weren't covered in water. So, if things would dry out, I think those fields would be okay. And there had been several fields that have been planted. So as long as we can keep the water from getting several feet deep over those areas, I think there's still some crops in there that'll do fairly well. It's just a matter of whether those levees are going to hold or not, and we hope and pray that they do.
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Dwayne. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next month.
All right. Thank you.
Dwayne Friend, Extension Educator, Environmental Stewardship and Energy on RFD, Town and Country Partners.
All ag.
All Illinois.
All now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food.
Are you preparing for planting season? We don't mean to be a pest, but here's a few things you need to know before you grow. The Illinois Department of Agriculture now requires special local needs labels, including new restrictions for the use of herbicide dicamba on top of soybeans in Illinois for the 2019 growing season. Did you know these additional restrictions go beyond federally approved labels? Remember, the label is the law. To find out more about these Illinois-specific labels, visit ilfb.org/label-aware.
Harm can impact your family and is related to food. I'm Mike Orso with RFD Town and Country Partners. Just what do many Illinois farmers face this June compared to this time in previous years?
Well, it's truly put us into uncharted territory.
Scott Irwin holds the Lawrence J. Norton Chair in Agricultural Marketing at the University of Illinois, and perhaps represented one of the first to raise a red flag about what many Illinois and other eastern Corn Belt farmers have faced thus far this planting, or should we say non-planting season.
A third of the corn crop still to plant. I mean, that's way off the charts for anything that we have in the records going back at least 40 years.
Irwin says Illinois farmers face a set of choices they've probably never encountered before, as a result of receiving rain nearly every other, if not every day during the month of May.
Very complicated decision because it involves trading off a lot of different factors. If we've got around 30 million acres left to plant of corn in June, I think as good a guess as any other is about a third of it will go prevent plant, about a third of it will still get planted, and about a third of it will switch to soybeans. That reasoning, of course, would lead to huge declines.
Irwin points out the increased risks many Illinois farmers face if they still want to plant corn in June.
Make sure, if you're going to do that, that you don't have wishful thinking about, what your expected yields should be. My thinking is planting corn in Illinois in the conditions that we're going to have in most areas, you should be thinking about a minimum of a 20% yield hit over whatever your normal yield projection would be.
And to those who might say, why don't you just plant something else? The U of I professor offers these observations.
Other alternatives, yes, can be grown. Lots of things, dozens and dozens of crops can be grown here in Illinois with the productive soils and the system we have. But in general, it would be far lower returns per acre and dollar invested than growing corn and soybeans.
Not since the drought of 2012 has Mother Nature thrown such a weather curveball. Scott Irwin notes the entire food production system in Illinois is what he calls a finely tuned machine, developed over decades to maximize returns to farmers and other landowners. We do that in Illinois by growing corn and soybeans, if we can plant a crop. For RFD Town and Country Partners, I'm Mike Orso.
Be it through headlines, microphones, or tweets, Mike Orso connects rural routes for you. Mike has been covering farm and food issues for more than 3 decades. Whether it's print, video, radio, or feeding your online appetite, Mike keeps you in the loop. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I keep our communities, state, and country in mind with everything I do. My job allows me to work toward this mission with farmers and other rural Illinoisans.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Warmer weather means a longer honeydew list. Your county farm bureau can help you stay on top of your project list and save you money along the way. A Farm Bureau membership offer includes discounts on equipment and supplies from Grainger, plus free shipping on all standard Grainger products. Browse thousands of items from landscaping equipment to power tools. Anything you need to get the job done, Grainger has it. Not a Farm Bureau member? Call us at 309-557-2689. Or visit Illinois Farm Bureau online and join today.
Welcome back to RFD Town and Country Partners. I'm DeLoss Yonke, joined over the phone by Pike Scott County Farm Bureau Manager Blake Roderick. Blake, how are you?
I'm doing fine, DeLoss.
This is normally the Look to the Stars segment. Are you able to look to the stars when there's just so much water at your feet these days?
Well, there's one star I see through the haze right now.
We got one right.
Our sun.
Right. That's a welcome sight, isn't it?
Yeah. While it lasts, we're glad to see it. That's for sure.
In fact, we might have temperatures in the 80s for a couple of days. So I don't know. Hopefully, some drying conditions, at least in the near term.
They're getting a lot of planted where they can plant, but we're no different than a lot of the rest of the state where we've had abnormal rains. Just this couple of days ago, we had a storm come through, and it might have had a little tornado with a lot of trees down, quite a bit of hail that did damage to corn that was already up. And then, of course, I had heard that one person had an inch of rain in 10 minutes, so we had some torrential downfall, but and where I live in Pittsfield, we might have had a trace of rain. So it was spotty, kind of a summer type thunderstorm, but sure didn't need any more water. That's for sure.
Well, an inch in any time, but an inch in 10 minutes. I mean, there's nowhere for it to go, especially in the case that you've been in recently.
Yeah, no, it goes over the roads, comes out of the field, over the roads, everywhere. But eventually we'll end up. They pump it out of the interior part of the drainage districts and then back out into the river. But that's on a much slower pace than water coming into the river straight off of somebody's parking lot or something like that. So, well, speaking of river, I'm on the Illinois River right now, and my feet are touching the edge of the river, and there's probably about maybe 6 inches here, a foot, before it's up on the bags. Of course, this is a very high spot because I'm right near the Florence Bridge. Here in Scott County, we do have places where the water is sitting up on the sandbags, backed by 1x12 boards, and it's up on those bags about 7-8 inches. So that's a pretty serious situation. Wow. To have that. And just getting ready for the worst because the river has at least 6 more inches to go up before she crests here on Wednesday. And it's supposed to be raining tomorrow, but hopefully it's nothing heavy.
How long?
And hopefully it stays away from the Illinois River drainage basin. I hope.
How long? Once Wednesday, how long is it supposed to be at that level?
Well, it'll crest like that, and it'll be above the 1943 flood of record for a week. So I mean, we got seriously high water, and it's going to stay up against these levees for another week before it starts going down. And when it does go down, it goes down. It just creeps. I mean, it's so slow on the Illinois River. It has to clear out down at down around Alton. That water has to clear out off the Mississippi before it starts draining the Illinois with any speed. So, we're kind of on the north end of the problem here in Scott County and Pike County. Our friends to the south in Greene, they've got more water on them than we do. And then you've got on the Mississippi River, water it crested there on Sunday through Pike County, and it's starting to go down. But again, the watershed for the upper Mississippi is bigger than that for Illinois. So if we get rains up in Iowa, that'll pop right back up again.
Well, every time over social media, especially yesterday, every time I'd be on Twitter, I'd see some terrible flooding incident on the Missouri side. If all that water is headed south of you, then I assume that just means, more backup for a longer period of time.
Yeah, exactly. Again, the drain is there, around north of St. Louis, and if Mississippi, the Illinois, and the Missouri all flow into it, and it can only get past St. Louis so fast. And hopefully we'll survive these rains that are predicted for the week, and we won't, we'll just, I guess the spigot will get turned off on some of this rain weather for the rest of the summer.
I think there's so many times you talk to folks, and maybe it's north of there, but they see the clouds coming, and then when it gets to the river, it all breaks apart. But apparently it hasn't done that recently.
Well, it used to be that way here during the drought years when we wanted it to rain. It sort of got to the river and parted. Of course, this year we're not seeing that happen. It only happens during a drought,
Right. Yeah, but when you need it to happen, it's just not happening, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, we certainly appreciate the update, and thoughts and prayers are with you guys as much as possible, but still plenty of heavy lifting ahead, it sounds like.
Yep, and we've got a lot of National Guard troops here. I think they're still tasked to work through tomorrow. Like I said, I'm here at the Florence Bridge. We're out 106 across the Illinois River from Pike into Scott. And these troopers have been doing a great job, helping out and filling in the gaps where we've got farmers who are working different parts of the levee, and these guys are doing just kind of segmenting up the jobs, and everybody's getting their job done. I know these National Guard folks are working all up and down the Illinois River right now.
Blake Roderick, RFD, Town and Country Partners.